Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. Today, we go one-on-one with Senator Mike Braun. The Republican discusses getting rid of the filibuster, COVID-19, and vaccine mandates with our Scott Sander.
Let's welcome in Senator Mike Braun, hard at work in Congress, as it's a very busy time, particularly now this week. A lot of conversation about the possible end of the filibuster in Senate. The president had hinted about it, but this week, for the first time, came right out and said this is an occasion to change the Senate rules. Your take on his decision to take that step, and if you will, how this differs in your mind from when things have been changed in the past, say when both Republicans and Democrats used it to change rules for judicial nominations.
So the employment calendar, or judges and cabinet positions, one thing. And you can see how that is morphed over time. Now they're wanting to do a carve-out just on voting rights legislation. And I think Joe Manchin said it pretty simply. It's hard to do a carve-out without getting the whole turkey cut up. So I think it would lead to frivolous legislation. It would whipsaw us back and forth between whoever's in control in the Senate. Early on, I thought, well, maybe the best idea wins. It ought to be out there. I've been here now 3 years, and if this place actually did much that generated results that you paid for without borrowing money from your kids and grandkids on anything, it'd be different. So it would be, in my opinion, similar to what we saw where it was used in a narrow way on the appointment side of the Senate. I think it would cascade into full-blown, even more spending, more frivolous legislation. Right now, we're asking that 60 senators get together so that there's some modicum of bipartisanship. And to me, it's mostly in response to the Build Back Better kind of floundering, falling apart. That was based upon bad ideas, too, of spending buku's amount of money with questionable programs. And here, they're going back to voting issues. Did you hear any complaints about voting access, even integrity issues pre-COVID? That was precipitated by rules being changed, laws being changed to accommodate voting, now wanting to make those permanent, and no one was complaining about it, pre-COVID. And the other thing, not to mention, is the Constitution is absolutely clear. Election law is the domain of the states, not the federal government.
As you mentioned, COVID runs as a thread through everything. You were part of a hearing this week. Several moments stood out as I watched. One was a leading voice saying it's time to deal with the fact that everyone is probably going to get COVID. Did that at all reframe the issue to you, and where do you feel the federal response stands right now?
That came after I asked Dr. Woodcock, the acting commissioner of the FDA. I wasn't going to go to Walensky and Fauci. I didn't think I'd get a clear answer from them. And it was based upon the Washington Post. I'm reading it Monday evening and almost dropped the paper when it said, "Enough is enough. America cannot be in constant anxiety, marinating in fear, and we can't disrupt the economy." That is an about face for a place that's been saying just the opposite. But enough is enough, and it's clear. And then she made, whether it was a Freudian slip or whether it's just the truth, is that almost everyone is going to be infected with it. And then when you're trying to push vaccines as the cure-all, it's one of many different things that we're going to need to fight this endemic disease with. I predicted it would be a wrestling match that had many frustrations from March 2020, when I weighed in on it, to the present. It's come true. Businesses have, I think, been really good about trying to keep their employees, their customers safe. And I think most of these solutions have to be tailored in a decentralized way. The top-down, one-size-fits-all just has not been producing the results. We've had more cases and more deaths by a large margin under Biden than we did Trump.
As we talk about the response and moving forward, our conversations date back to when businessman Mike Braun was interested in serving in Congress. I want to make crystal clear how you stand on the issue of vaccines, because I know you watch what happens at the State House back here in Indiana. Should business owners be able to decide for themselves whether to mandate vaccines?
So I've been clear on mandates. I don't like them, period. And the higher up they are issued, to me, the more burdensome and off the mark they're going to be. When it comes down to, is it the individual, or is it a business, or is it an entity like a local school board or government, that gets to be a tricky conversation, because you're getting down in the area where I think it needs to be generally. And I'm going to be in that camp to where if a business chooses to do it, they ought to be very careful about it, because they better make sure their employees are in agreement with them. But you probably have to give them the ability to do it. And any individual should never be forced and should have the flexibility to either say it makes sense because I view it in my own best self-interest, maybe in conversation with their doctor. And I think you're at least getting it at a level that is much better than the way the Biden administration's been trying to run it. Like, hey, get a vaccine or lose your job, and doing it from the very highest levels, homogenizing an approach across all of our states. And I think state government's got to be careful too, that they make sure they're not putting in methodologies, laws that restrict the freedoms of any individual.
Senator Mike Braun, thank you.
You bet.
Coming up, a challenger to Senator Todd Young. Meet the man that may be the Democrats' best hope of taking a Senate seat. Well, the 2022 campaign is officially underway as candidates can now officially file to be on this year's ballot. The top race, U.S. Senate, where Todd Young will seek a second term. Now, among the Democrats hoping to beat him, Tom McDermott. He served as mayor of Hammond in Northwest Indiana since 2004, and he's the leading name on the list of Democratic Senate candidates so far. And let's welcome in Tom McDermott, now the mayor of Hammond. Tom, good to see you. You're the candidate for Senate here in Indiana. Very well known in Hammond. You've been the mayor since 2004. For folks at home who are watching who maybe aren't familiar, give us a 30-second synopsis on Tom McDermott.
Thanks. I've been the mayor of Hammond, Indiana for 18 years. I'm in my 5th term right now. I'm known for a college program that I started in Hammond that gives free college tuition to our homeowners. It's one of the big things I was known for locally. But more importantly, I joined the United States Navy when I was 18 years old, served on a fast attack nuclear powered submarine.
Wow. As
an electrician, got out of the Navy, put myself through college, put myself through law school. So I've been a jack of all trades, owned my own business for a few years, and I ran for mayor, and I'm still licensed to practice law in Indiana. However, I don't really practice very often. I'm pretty busy with my full-time job.
Sure.
And obviously now I'm getting around the state, meeting great Hoosiers, and seeing this great state, and it's very exciting.
We thank you for your service, years in the Navy. Let's get to the campaign now. What's your #1 issue?
I honestly believe the U.S. Senate's broken right now, and I think it's going to take somebody like me to go in there and fix it. And I don't think Todd Young's a bad guy, I don't. And I don't think Mike Braun's a bad guy, I don't. But I think that they've sort of become too DC. In fact, so out of touch, Todd Young in this case, so out of touch that he voted against $8 billion to come to the state of Indiana. And I tell you what, when you're not bringing money back to our schools, and you're not bringing money back to our governments, and you don't think $8 billion is a good idea for our state to help broadband and to help our infrastructure, I think you lost touch with Hoosiers. He's become focused on raising money, and he's forgotten who his bosses are, and that's us, the Hoosiers.
As you very well know, Democrats for the last few months have been touting the success of the American Rescue Plan. How do you turn that into a positive for you come campaign time?
I simply talk about, when I show up to Indianapolis and I say, Indianapolis got $200 million from the American Rescue Plan, and your mayor is using that money for good use, and it's going to your schools and making your schools better and your teachers more money, and Todd Young voted against it. And it's a fact. I don't have to attack them. These are facts that I'm talking about. And when you become so out of touch that you don't think Indianapolis Public Schools could use more money, you've really lost touch with what's going on in Indiana, and that's what I'm going to talk about.
The president has faced some popularity issues. How do you? It's kind of a weird place to be, right? You're campaigning as you're a Democrat, and the president of the United States is a Democrat, and his popularity is kind of dwindling. So how do you turn that around?
Well, you know, obviously, I think the president did a good thing in pulling us out of Afghanistan. It was ugly. A number of presidents could have done that, and they didn't. And Joe Biden, give him credit. He got us out of there. We were spending upwards of $100 million a day to stay in there and to keep our troops equipped, and we're out of there, and we're not hemorrhaging that money anymore. And Joe Biden has been real good about shots, getting more Americans vaccinated in this pandemic. And I dare say, whoever the president of the United States is during a pandemic is not going to be a popular person. And I think Joe Biden, under the circumstances, has done a great job, and I'm proud to stand next to him and campaign with him. You know, but that doesn't mean that everything that the president comes up with, I'm lockstep with, because I'm not. I mean, I'm an individual. I'm very conservative. Also, for a Democrat, I'm very conservative, and I'm going to bring my own style to the U.S. Senate.
Well, that being said, where do you stand on the vaccine mandate? Because as you very well know, the Supreme Court just struck it down. Had they not done that, would you be in favor of it or against it?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't really had a choice if the U.S. Supreme Court said it was fine. And, you know, in any business with over 100 employees, which City Hammond has well over 100 employees, would have to implement vaccinations. We were getting ready for it. Now, I personally wasn't very comfortable with mandating vaccines, especially one like this, you know, that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccine. By the way, I'm vaccinated. In fact, I have a booster. I wear a mask when I'm in public. But the fact is, I was very uncomfortable with mandating this vaccination at this time. Even my own family, this is a hard subject in my own immediate family. There's people in my family that are afraid of this shot. And I just don't think we're at the point right now where you should say everybody has to. I mean, because we are free Americans and we do have the right to choose.
Your thoughts on the filibuster?
I think the U.S. Senate's broken. I'll be honest, Phil, and I think part of the reason it's broken is the filibuster. And I want to point out that it's not like our forefather. We've tinkered with the U.S. Senate in the last 100 years. You know, when we first, you know, became a republic, we couldn't even directly elect our senators.
Right.
So the fact is, we've tinkered. In fact, we inserted the filibuster rule into the Senate. There's nothing about the filibuster in the U.S. Constitution. So I think that the U.S. Senate's broken. I think the best thing we could do is remove the filibuster and let the majority win.
What do you say to Joe Manchin, who says, hey, if we get rid of that, then the Republicans can use it against the Democrats going forward?
I understand it cuts both ways, but, you know, right here in Indianapolis, the city county council doesn't have to have a supermajority to pass legislation. The Hammond City Council doesn't have to have a supermajority. The Indiana House of Representatives, Indiana Senate doesn't have to have this. It's unique to the U.S. Senate, and the fact is, when you're in the majority, you get to get things done, and if you're not, and you know, obviously you have checks and balances with the president and the U.S. House and the U.S. Supreme Court. So
right, all right, we'll see what happens on that. 30 seconds left, Tom. One last word to our viewers about you.
I'm going to work real hard. I'm going to shake your hand. I'm not going to look at Indiana and say that's a red part and this is a blue part. I'm only going to go here. I want to represent all 6 million people that live in the state of Indiana. I want to do a good job for you, and I want to bring money home from Washington, D.C. to help rebuild your communities and pay your teachers and build better schools. That's what I'm all about, and I think Todd Young has lost his way.
Okay, there you have it. Tom McDermott, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Phil. It's great to see you.
Same here. All right, coming up, the Supreme Court blocks the Biden administration's vaccine mandate. Our political experts discuss the fallout next on All Indiana Politics. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Kip Tu, former chairman of the Indiana Democratic Party, and Tom John, former chairman of the Marion County Republicans. We'll start with the COVID vaccine mandate. The Supreme Court, as you gentlemen very well know, says that the Biden vaccine mandate can't take effect, but Indiana lawmakers are still moving forward with banning mandates here in Indiana. Kip, I'll start with you on this Sunday. The ruling, kind of a big setback for the White House, no?
Well, it was a narrow ruling. On the one hand, they said that OSHA cannot be the agency that enforces a vaccine mandate, because on the other hand, the very next case, they said hospitals still can have a vaccine mandate based on if they have get money from Medicare or Medicaid. So they didn't rule that vaccine mandates were unconstitutional. They just said the way in which the Biden administration went about in trying to enforce this mandate went beyond the bounds of what Congress envisioned for OSHA to do.
Right.
So it is a setback, no question about it, for us fighting the virus. But I don't think it was a large precedent-setting case.
So that brings us to the other part of the question, Tom. Should that ruling be enough here in Indiana? Why keep moving forward on a total vaccine ban on the state side?
Well, the Indiana bill is really different because at the end of the day, it would have had no particular effect had the federal mandate stood. So now it's trying to gap fill, and frankly, if Congress doesn't or hasn't authorized the president and the executive to undertake something, then that's inherently leaving it to the states. And so they're having the debate right now about what's appropriate and what isn't. And so what bill will come out of the session, we're still pretty early in this, and so we'll see.
Right.
But like so many things, the discussion about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate is exactly what we do during the legislative session. And I think that the General Assembly has members that have positions on both sides, and they're working out where they should gap fill for what the feds haven't done and aren't allowed to do.
Kip, your response, do you think it's just politics, or is there something genuine here?
Well, I think it's a mixture of both. Certainly, there's politics in play. You've got the Trumpers who and the anti-vaxxers and those sorts who really don't want any mandates at all. They think everything's fake, and there's a certain portion of the Republicans' constituency that they're trying to play to. But there is a legitimate issue here about the power of government and the power of business and all those things. Those are all fair points to have arguments about. We're in a pandemic. We do have mandated vaccines for a lot of different kind of diseases. I think that the debate's a little stale when it comes to that because we settled it many years ago with the polio vaccine and other things. But I do understand why Republican politicians are worried about their primaries.
Yeah. So let's talk the election season, gentlemen. The big announcement, as you guys very well know this week, is that Congressman Trey Hollingsworth will not seek re-election. Kind of twofold here. How big of a surprise is this? And is this more about running for governor in 2024? Tom, we'll start with you.
Well, I don't think it's a huge surprise because when Congressman Hollingsworth came in, he was somebody who spoke in terms of people not going to D.C. and staying there permanently, and somebody who believed in term limits, at least at the individual level of coming, doing your duty, and coming back. So I think from that perspective, it may have been surprising that people weren't expecting it, but it's sort of ironic that really you're talking about people not expecting somebody to do what they said they'd do. So from that perspective, I understand people being surprised, but if you were listening to what he said all along, I don't think it is. And when he comes back, I mean, then we'll see what he does, if he does business or if he looks at other opportunities.
Kip, is he going to run for governor?
Well, I like the phrase "come back." He's not from Indiana; he's from Tennessee. He looked around the country and looked for a district, and his dad helped him buy that congressional seat. It'll be interesting if his dad tries to help him buy a governor's seat. He's going to have a lot harder competition if he does try to run for governor. He's got to get past Todd Rokita, Suzanne Crouch, and a whole bunch of other candidates on the Republican side before he has to hit a Democratic opponent. So, when you got enough money and you don't have anything else to do, I suppose running for governor is something to look at. But he's not a Hoosier.
Right. Tom, quick, we have a minute left, so I just want to clear this up real quickly. Kip brought it up. There are a lot of names out there come 2024. Are you concerned?
There's certainly a lot of names out there. Anytime you go through an election cycle, you have lots of names out there. And I think Trey Hollingsworth would be an outstanding governor. I think that our lieutenant governor could be. I think Attorney General Rokita could be. There are lots of great names. That's not a negative. It's a positive that the Republican Party has lots of leaders that people are talking about. We haven't heard from any of them other than Eric Doden, who once again is somebody with a stellar record, who is actually in. You're going to have the punditry. You're going to have all this. And we'll get to a race where we'll debate issues and ideas, and we'll end up with a good candidate that runs in the fall.
We'll see what happens.
Of 2024.
We're going to wrap it up. But Kip, any word yet on a Democratic candidate?
Well, there's several actually. Eddie Melton, Ryan Ryan Hatfield and others. So,
Okay.
yes.
All right. We'll see what happens. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll be right back.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Thank you for joining us on this Sunday. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. Have a great rest of your weekend.